Welcome to the Vitality Lounge, a place where the uncomfortable questions become comfortable, where conversations, topics, and expert guests unlock the keys to vitality, empowering you to embrace the vibrant life you deserve. Now here's your host, Micol Bok.
Today's guest is a true emblem of vitality. He is a professional triathlete, a World Guinness record holder for speed golfing, and a New York Times best-selling author. He pushes people to perform at their peak throughout life with passion. So I'm very happy to have him here on the Vitality Lounge. Please help me welcome Brad Kearns. So, hi, Brad. Welcome to the Vitality Lounge. How are you doing?
Hi, Micol. Nice to have this opportunity to talk to you and see if we can get some vitality out there into the world.
I love that. Yes, thank you so much for being here. So, Brad, talking about vitality, I like to start off the podcast always asking, what is vitality for you and what does it mean to you?
Oh, wow. What a great starting question. To me, it's the energy of the body and that spark to get up every day and do something. And in my life experience, I haven't had that every single day. And I realize how precious it is. I think back to my time when I competed as a professional on the World Triathlon circuit for 9 years. And I had a great time traveling around the world and training really, really hard and dedicating my entire life to getting better and making these incremental improvements in the sport of triathlon, where you're doing extreme endurance for swimming, bicycling, and running. And boy, sometimes when the travel got to be too much and the training, I would become exhausted and it would take me a long time to recover. So I kind of know what it feels like to wake up in the morning and not feel that spark and have
Mhm.
to go back and reflect, what did I do to get myself here to a position where I don't feel like exercising, I'm exhausted, I have a bad attitude, all those kind of things. And without vitality, it's really difficult, I think, to achieve mental health as well as, happiness and all these things that we aspire to as, the essence of living life.
Yeah, I love that. I love that vitality is like energy, the spark, right? The spark to life practically. And vitality can mean a lot of different things for different people. But in regards to your life, you're telling me a little bit about like you're an athlete, right? So maybe let's talk a little bit about that to your audience. You expect athletes to always have energy, but that's not the case, right? You have to build that. You have to work on it as well, and you have to bring it through as you grow in as an athlete and as a person as well in your adult life.
Yeah, I think especially in the endurance sports and those who are listening or familiar or who participate, it's a really, really difficult endeavor to get fitter for these extreme endurance events. And marathon running is so popular, and ultras and triathlons and the Ironman distance triathlon and people that are doing the adventure races and things that really take a long time out there. So they're, multiple hours or anything from an hour on up as extreme endurance. And so the training and the preparation is, a huge dedication of chunk of time in your life. Unlike perhaps some other sports where if you're, uh, playing a basketball, you're going to go to practice and you're going to practice a couple hours every day, and that's a pretty big commitment too. But, the energy cost of getting good at endurance sports is really all consuming. And then you have to be strategic because the ideal of just being really tough and disciplined and motivated, and you get up every day and you push your body, that gets you into big trouble, especially in endurance sports.
Yeah.
And I learned that as a young person where I had so much passion and desire to get good, and I was pursuing this dream career that, I always wanted to be a professional athlete when I was a little kid. It was in the other major sports, but of course that didn't happen for me. But I got to live out this dream. And so I was very willing to do whatever it took every single day and put all that energy out. And then you realize people are kicking your butt. Why are they going faster than me? It's because I had that unregulated competitive intensity where I pushed myself too hard and left my best performances in the practice area because the approach wasn't well informed. And
Hmm.
that was a great learning experience for me as a young person, and it really informs everything that I do in life today. So,
Yeah,
as a parent, now my kids are in their 20s, adults, but there's a possibility of over-parenting and trying too hard and getting too deep into how the kid is living their life to the extent that you can actually uh, you know, try too hard and create damage and dysfunction as a parent. And I think same with the workplace. And we see today it's so glorified to crush all your goals and, outwork the competition and
hmm,
continue to consume and rise up higher and be more conspicuous with how you rank in the hierarchy of society. But I think that can also destroy one's potential for
of course.
well-being, balance, vitality, happiness, and all those things.
Of course, you end up depleted. Like in today's society, it's like that rat race, go, 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 go until you're sick and your body tells you like, hey, you have to stop, right? And as an athlete, even more because you push those boundaries even more. You train hard, so probably your endurance is better, but at a certain point you hit rock bottom. And so, Brad, you started as an athlete when you were young and you're still an athlete. How did that relationship to vitality and training in general change as you grew into that?
Oh, great question. Thank you. So when I was young and I got put into the endurance sports, that was a great path for me. But I do feel like a lot of that stuff is a young person's game and it's not directly associated with health. In fact, what I did as a professional triathlete, I think was in direct conflict to my overall general state of health. And it was actually a way to accelerate the aging process. So what I
Hmm.
did between the ages of 20 and 30, I will actually argue that I probably aged my body 20 years in a span of 10 years because I was
Hmm.
pushing so hard and traveling so much on the airplanes and getting used to new climates and new time zones and pushing my body through these crazy workouts and races that it took a long time to just have the dust settle and recover. So, with the
Yeah.
desire to continue to be fit and healthy and competitive throughout life, I've really radically transformed my approach and my goals to endeavors that I really enjoy and am passionate about, but they're, I believe, directly correlated with overall health, vitality, and longevity. So today, I'm in the older age groups in the masters track and field. I just turned 60. I can't even believe it myself, but I compete in the 60 plus division now, which is fun.
Amazing.
And my favorite events are high jumping and 400-meter sprint. So what I used to do for hours and hours and competing in these long distance races, now my 400-meter race lasts for a minute and the high jump lasts for a few seconds. And I run up to the bar and jump over with explosive power and mobility and flexibility and all these things that the research is definitely bearing out are the big ones for longevity. Now, cardiovascular endurance, of course, that's a sign of health and very important for longevity as well. But what
Hmm.
I think most people don't understand is that you can build your cardiovascular system to a level of A plus score without this extreme devotion to running 30, 40, 50 miles a week like the runners are used to thinking about or
Yeah.
the triathletes training for hours and hours. So even someone who goes and does an exercise class and takes a hike on the weekend or goes and lifts weights in the gym for 45 minutes, these are great cardiovascular training sessions.
Hmm.
There's no one that can argue that training the cardio has to be steady state. But we always
Yeah.
talk about, oh, did you get your cardio? What kind of cardio do you do? Oh, I do 45 minutes on the stationary bike and then I go home. It doesn't have to be steady state. And in fact, there are many reasons why a varied approach to cardio can be healthier and less destructive in the manner that steady state training often is.
Yeah. I love that. I love what you said at the beginning, like that you actually aged yourself more rather than helped yourself grow in a better athlete. I think that's something that happens nowadays quite a lot, not only with young athletes, but in general. Like we think we push through, we think we're doing all the right things, but then actually we turn out we're pushing too much, right? And
Hmm.
that's not helpful for our body. We might look good on the outside, but come 60 and you still look great because you've changed your philosophy. But then some people might not change it and then they can't walk anymore. Their knees are bone
Mm,
on bone, like there's no cartilage anymore. So what is your, I know there's been what you just said, like about maybe not having to do that steady cardio all the time, or there's different ways of approaching that. Is there also a way that you can do it from a maybe recovery tools that you've seen, or more recovery rather than pushing through all the time, or maybe diets, nutrients that
mm.
you continue to bring in? What's your thoughts on that?
Right. I mean, that's a good way to set it up that, true health and vitality and longevity require a comprehensive approach. And I think it's hard to dispute that it would start with sleep. And when we use the term sleep now, I like to
Sleep.
say,
Nobody sleeps
yeah.
nowadays.
I mean, people think about it and talk about it, and everyone nods their head how important it is, but then we kind of compromise in real life, and we might not even notice in a lot of cases. I think with all the digital stimulation that happens after dark, and we want to
Yeah.
unwind from a busy, hectic, stressful day by watching our series on Netflix. Especially if it's Nathan Fielder stuff. I can't believe how amazing his new show is. But everyone likes to relax and celebrate and enjoy life, and that's fine. But I think when we indulge in so much artificial light and digital stimulation after dark, we have the potential to compromise our true, actual sleep needs that we don't even understand or realize until we go on vacation and are able to sleep in without the mind racing about what's happening come the morning hours. So I've always prioritized sleep, and that dates back to my time as an athlete where I needed the energy so badly and
Yeah.
needed so much sleep. And so being able to put that as centerpiece, I think is something that before we talk about any other details about what's your favorite workouts and all that, if you're not nailing your overall, and I like to call it sleep, rest, recovery, restoration, and add those other words to it because, of course, the evening sleep is the centerpiece position. But I think today, for the first time ever in the history of humanity, we have this critical obligation to find ways to achieve downtime from nonstop digital stimulation,
Yep.
hyperconnectivity, and just a fast-paced life like we've never had before. And I
Hmm.
remember, I told you my age, so like half of my life, there were no internet or mobile devices, more than half. And
Yep.
so I remember times like standing in line at the airport and waiting to get your bag x-rayed. And sometimes it would be like an hour-long line when things got crowded, and you'd just be standing there. And maybe you'd have a
Yep.
magazine to read or a book or something, but sometimes you'd just be even talking to strangers or staring off into space and
You
all these
spoke to
things that
strangers,
we
Brad? That never happens nowadays. What
yeah,
do you mean?
no,
You
because
don't interact.
everyone's got their head in their device, so there's no opening to like make eye
Exactly.
contact
Yeah.
and all those lost arts that we have. Yeah, so we need that downtime as well as excellent sleeping habits and sleep environment, and that sets you up. Like we talked about at the very start of the show, what does it mean
Yep.
to me? Vital lifestyle is having that energy to wake up and actually, have an inclination to go and move and exercise your body. And we
Yep.
do have a huge problem in the health space today where there's a lot of people lecturing and saying what to do, and here's what's most important. And boy, if you don't feel like it deep down as a person with that natural motivation and desire to move, it's going to be really difficult to take all this expert advice. And I
Yep.
have people close to me, I know people that because of health disturbances of one way, shape, or form, or lifestyle situations, they don't have the energy to put out.
Yeah. Yeah. What has helped you for sleep and recovery in general? And has it changed as you aged and in your life?
That's good. Well, I think there's probably some big things that all the listeners can reflect upon, and one of them is that pattern, that evening routine that you engage in.
Mm,
And the great advice is to try to get away from the digital stimulation in the final hour at least, and do things that are calming and relaxing and set you up for a good night's sleep. Ariana Huffington, best-selling book, The Sleep Revolution. Sean Stevenson, his book, Sleep Smarter, with his 31 different tips that you can try to plug into your life. And none of them are difficult to do, but
yeah.
it is important to kind of disengage from the things that can easily compromise our sleep. And one example is like if you watch high stimulation digital entertainment programming, such as a violent show or a horror show or a exciting game with the crowd cheering, and then try to push the off button and then go put your head on a pillow, for a lot
Yep.
of people, that's going to be difficult. And so if you can kind of ease into the time when the lights go out, that can work for a lot of people. But other times, I talk to a lot of people about this and ask people about their sleeping habits. And I think the racing mind and the tendency for rumination in modern life
Mm,
is really getting in the way of proper restoration. A good friend of mine, Dr. Ron Sinha, has been on my podcast several times. He wrote the book, The South Asian Health Solution. He
mm,
has a great podcast called the Meta Health Podcast. He identifies rumination as an actual disease state of the physical body. And he takes care of clientele in California's Silicon Valley. So these are tech workers from the major companies that people have heard of,
imagine.
like Google, Facebook, whatever. This population is the highest paid employee group on the planet.
Yeah.
Because we're here in America, these are the software engineers, they have the highest average income. And so these are very, very affluent people in general. And they have an extreme amount of rumination and depression, anxiety, and all the things that go with it because of this keeping up with the Jones type of
Yep.
mentality and this FOMO mentality that is created even in a fluent environment, and perhaps even more so in a fluent environment, because if you're a high-tech worker, you make a good income, you have a nice
Yep.
home, which by the way has the median home price is like $1.5 million for a simple home. But then
Yep.
here's your neighbor in a $7 million home. You're going to feel inferior, even if you
Of
have a
course.
beautiful lifestyle. And
Of
so
course.
to control, to discipline the mind and the emotions, to, take care of yourself first, including your thoughts that you produce about your own life and all
Mm,
those things. Oh my
yep.
goodness, that can be super important for going back to the original topic of sleep, but also just
Yep.
getting through the day in a graceful and nice balanced manner.
Yeah, I love that you brought that comparison. It's not only the physical aspect, but it also the emotional aspect, the energy, whatever your thoughts bring. Everything affects vitality, right? Sleep, we're saying sleep as part of a recovery tool to achieve vitality. But if your thoughts are not aligned, if your energy is not there, if you roam around, then it's not going to work. You're not going to have the energy for what is actually important. I think another thing that comes to mind is also being able to say no to the things that you don't have to do and don't want to do. We're in a
Mm.
kind of yes society. Again, not only in what is work, but in everything. We try to be a part of everything. We have that FOMO. And so it's like, yes, yes, yes. But then, I mean, there's so much we can do, and your energy gets depleted. So it's very important to also be able to control that mindset, as you're saying, for every aspect of life in general.
And then, oh, gee, how do we do that? Well, guess what? If you get out and walk and physical exercise your body every day and plug in these standards of living, that's really going to help you with
Yep.
your tendency toward racing thoughts, rumination. So everything goes hand in hand with the other. And you ask quickly about diet, and of course, how you fuel your body. We don't have 27 variables here. We have like the air you breathe, the people you hang around with, the food you eat, the balance of stress and rest, the physical exercise. And I think real people that I talk to, friends, family members, people that aren't, completely immersed into the health space like you and I are every day, sometimes there's a tendency to get confused or overwhelmed with all the
So much.
information that we're bombarded with. So
Yep.
I like to take several steps back And, when we talk about diet, geez, I've written many, many books about diet, including extremely regimented and sophisticated diets like the ketogenic diet or the benefits of fasting and all these things. But for most people, the starting point is like, look, how about we go into your kitchen and throw out all the crap? And
Yeah.
that would be cleaning up your act as the first step before we talk about what's the best things to eat and what
Hmm.
time should I eat these meals.
Hmm.
Let's just get rid of the junk so we can have a reasonable conversation about how to get better.
Yeah, never walk the middle aisles at the supermarket, the grocery
That
stores.
kind of
Always
thing.
stay
Yeah.
at the outside aisles, and that's kind of where you find the fresh fruit and vegetables. I think that's very important. We, a lot of people, I think, are so overwhelmed, and I include myself into this journey of health and wellness. Like, there's so much out there, right? And there's so many biohacks, and there's so many different things. Um, that you kind of have to stop for a second and bring it back to the basics. And what you just said, it's like sleep, good movement, and really cleaning up the basic things in your kitchen. And then you can start finding out what is better for your body. Because every body also is different. Like you're an athlete, Brad. The way that you take care of yourself and the needs that you have are going to be different than someone else that is not a triathlete and has that kind of regimen, right? So it's not everything isn't applicable for me as a woman also. Like
Hmm.
that can change too. We're very different beings ultimately too.
Hmm.
Brent, you were talking about routines, and I know again we don't want to go specifically into routines because everyone is a little different, but what has worked for you so far? And I think, again, that journey of change throughout the years, and what have you adopted that has helped you and what you want to do and keep doing
Mm.
for the future as well?
One thing that's been really a great change in my life for the past 8 years now is I initiated this morning flexibility, mobility, strengthening
Hmm.
routine. And the reason I did it is because I'm doing my competitive sports and my sprinting. And so I do these great sprint workouts. And then I would feel aches and pains and niggles and get minor injuries. And it was kind of frustrating because I'm trying to do the best I can. But I realized that my foundation, my starting point from which to launch these ambitious workouts could be better. I could be more resilient, more flexible, more mobile. So I said, what if I did something every day that wasn't that strenuous? It didn't take that much time, but it kind of got my body going, starting with the feet because, the feet are so important to your overall kinetic chain activity and safe exercise and doing peak performance things. And so I started getting out of bed and immediately hitting the deck, going down to the ground and doing some different dynamic stretches, mobility exercise movements, rolling the feet around in a circle in both directions, going down onto my toes, going up onto my toes, then swinging the leg through and pressing forward. And you can see my sequences on YouTube to get details. But I think the main point here is that every morning I start my day with a brief movement routine, and it makes me feel alert and energized. And then whatever exercise that I do and whatever my particular goals are, everyone's different, like you just said, at least I have that foundation from which to go and launch the workouts, and they're much more sustainable and enjoyable because of this movement routine. And it also kind of makes a vote for taking care of my health and my fitness as the first thing I do every day. And so
Yep.
I feel like it sets me up for success in many ways because it shows that I have the ability to, for example, adhere to a healthy habit and the discipline and the focus necessary. And it's so automatic now that I don't even think about it. I don't need to psych myself up or see if I have time. It's like brushing your teeth in the evening. Like most people can raise their hand and say, yeah, I pretty much do that every day. I'm pretty good about that. And I don't need to get motivated or put it on my to-do list. It just goes with the flow. So I've
Yep.
established this morning routine as a deep, deep habit at the same level as brushing teeth or what have you. And this is within reach of everyone. And so if you're busy and you have to get the kids up and get food in them before the bus comes, maybe you only have 5 minutes to yourself, but you can go and do, for example, the yoga sun salute routine. You can find that on video quickly where, you stretch your arms to the sky, you sweep them down, you touch your toes, you bend to the left, you bend to the right, whatever it is that just
Yeah.
wakes your body up a little bit, but it's also putting you into this state of a proactive approach to life rather than what we're faced with today, which is basically a reactive approach to all the stimulation that we're bombarded with every day. There was a survey by Adweek that revealed that 84% of Americans do the same thing every day. You know what it is? The first thing they do every day.
Pick up their phone.
They reach for their phones.
Yep.
So that's what we all do as our first, 84% of us do as our first act. Oh, and by the way, half of those people reach for their phones while they're still in bed. And
Mm-hmm.
so as soon as that phone comes into your brain, and this is from the psychology experts. Dr. Delamonte, I think was her last name. She said, once you get into this reactive mode in the brain, it's very difficult to extricate from. So now you're in reactive mode all day because you start your day reacting to intermittent variable rewards, is what Tristan Harris calls it, the Center for Humane Technology. In other words, the phone is trying to capture your attention and
Yeah.
lure and entice you to consume more and more content because that's how the big operators achieve corporate success, is the more
Yeah.
time you spend on social media or scrolling through your text messages and engaging with information that's new and novel and exciting. And uh, it's going to draw you in more so than, let's say, doing the same exact sequence of stretches and movements that I do that you could consider boring in comparison to looking at the sports highlights from the previous night.
Yeah. That's I love what you brought up, being like reactive versus active kind of state. I never thought of it like that, but it totally makes sense, right? Whenever you bring up Actually, we're constantly on a reactive state, most of the time at least, because we're fed so much information. We are constantly on our phone, iPads, laptops, because that's how the society is built today. But
Hmm.
then we forget that being on an active state is actually what moves us forward, and it brings us back again. You said bringing it back to the basics. It's practically bringing it back to the basics, like the stretching, just moving your feet, which are like, oh, well, whatever. No, it's actually being conscious and mindful of those little things that really make a difference on the long term, mentally and physically as you grow as well. So it's really interesting. And it always brings me back to thinking like, well, what about the society nowadays, the kids that are just growing up with like, phones all the time, like we're literally attached to that. Like how will that affect and how can we grow out of it and bring a bit of this active state into their lives rather than being constantly reactive?
Well, even when you are at work interacting with your screen, there's a desperate need to stay in a focused and proactive state and get your stuff done instead of just responding to the barrage of texts and emails and the things that distract us. Cal Newport, best-selling book called Deep Work, he says that people gain a huge competitive advantage in the workplace by being able to engage in deep work and
Mm-hmm.
create something of significance rather than just staying on top of all the back and forth communication. And
Yep.
to me, this is a really meaningful point because I have been writing books for many, many years, and that is a pretty focused and challenging endeavor to start with a
Absolutely.
blank screen, if you might imagine, and then coughing up a 300-page book at some point. And so I have to desperately have to disengage from the
Yep.
reactive instant gratification mode that most of us operate in. And boy, it is a challenge in today's life, unlike the old days. It's
Yep.
much easier to write a book now because I can type into a Google search and find exactly the quote or the reference that I was thinking of.
Yep.
However, in the old days, you would go to the library and take handwritten notes from a stack of books before you put the books away, and everything was much slower, but way more focused and
Hmm.
less distractible than today.
Yeah, I feel that in my work as well, just in general. There's so many different inputs. Like I had to restructure my work beginning of the year. I'm like, okay, I have meetings all the time throughout the day. This I can't focus. Like I need at least I can't focus because I'm jumping
Yeah.
every half an hour, I'm jumping on something. Half an hour is not enough for me to work on the actual things I need to do. So I restructured my day and I'm lucky enough that I could do that and shift these meetings mostly in the morning so that in the
Mm,
afternoon is when I actually get my work done. If not, it's you're jumping around like crazy. It's like the monkey
mm.
brain definition, right? You jump around from one thing to the other and you're never able to focus on one thing only. So it's interesting. It takes work when in the past that was kind of the thing. Now it's you'd
Mm.
actually need to separate and isolate yourself for it.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. And especially when we hear like this blanket condemnation of social media and how terrible it is for you and how you shouldn't stay on it too long. And we also have to recognize that our modern communication methods are wonderful and have so many
Of
positive
course.
benefits. I'm not in Miami with you now. I'm on the West Coast. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to
Yep.
have this talk without
I
getting
was
on an
gonna say the same
airplane,
thing.
you know. So all the positive things can be ours to enjoy
Hmm.
and benefit from as long as we exert a little discipline and use the tools to our advantage rather than just let them suck us into the vacuum. I think that's important clarification.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean that there's still not a lot of evil forces out there trying to pull you away from having a healthy, happy, well-balanced life. But it's also on you if you are going to look at the social media content and decide to feel inferior because everyone's driving a much more fancy car than you or whatever the emotion that is driving in. So I'm working on that myself, especially that ability to remain disciplined and focused because boy, everything's right there at our fingertips. And as we immerse, like you said, this is how the economy is built today. It's pretty hard to keep one toe in and be a person who's who's responsive and part of the game, and then also do your best work and live your best life and all those things. So it's a
Yeah.
constant balancing act every single day.
Yeah, for sure. Brett, let me bring it back a little bit to the whole vitality sports and men, I would say. Um, I think there's a lot of men that get into their 50s and they've worked all their life, they've had a great career, and then they reach 50, 60, and they're like, well, my health is terrible. I want to get back into it. What can I do? What are the first steps that I can do to actually regain that vitality that I lost. Or maybe they retire at 65
Mm.
and now they're like, well, what do I do? Because they were so immersed into their active reactive approach, but work mode all in, and then they just let go of themselves instead of being able to regain maybe their peak vitality or maintain it if they had it already.
Yeah, that's great. It's so true that like we get to the finish line sometimes and then we kind of lose our purpose and that economic contribution that we've made and that sense of satisfaction. So when I put up my website, I have this message, a very front page that says pursue peak performance with passion throughout life. And I think it's really, really important to maintain a competitive edge of some kind throughout life. And it can be in whatever direction that really turns you on the most. And I talk about how I transitioned from endurance athlete to now I'm a sprinter and a jumper. And what I do is so much fun and
Yeah.
has so much significance and importance to me that when I'm practicing by myself in empty high school stadium and I clear the high jump bar, I scream with joy and it
Yeah.
feels just as significant as years ago when I was racing on ESPN for a big prize check and recognition in the magazines and was at the professional level and it seemed so important. But deep down, we have to kind of hone something that means a lot to us and that we're going to dedicate ourselves to and do things that are scary and out of our comfort zone and all those great things. That's what makes for a rich and meaningful life. And I think especially on the physical fitness or the athletic side, what we tend to do instead is we have our heyday in our younger years, and then we just tell stories the rest of our life while we
Yeah.
watch the NFL on television for 9 hours straight, or we move away from the sports that really demand total comprehensive full body functional fitness, and instead we're content to ride around the golf course in a cart and just hit the ball around, but not really excel or even care about excelling. And so that part's kind of sad because I think people are really missing out when they are content to just follow the pack along on a path to accelerated aging. And that's what we're
Yeah.
looking at today, is that whatever we think is normal and we perceive to be normal is actually a disastrous condition of accelerated aging brought on by
Yeah.
adverse lifestyle practices. But
Yeah.
because it's become normal, it's messed up all of our heads where we need to like escape from the matrix and realize, wait, I'm only 50 years old or 47
Exactly.
or 63 or 71. I can still go out there and perform. And as we talk about OmniWave and the work that we're doing together, sexual dysfunction and decline is so common, and the
That too.
drugs are dispensed at such a stunning rate. Oh
Yep.
my gosh, some of these statistics, like this many percentage of men under 40 are taking ED drugs and things like that. That's not normal. That's not
Yep.
acceptable. And so it's really something that we need to rail against and say, wait a second, I'm going to stand up for myself and take care of my body. I didn't really answer your question beautifully yet, but like if someone's lost it a little bit and wants to get it back, one thing I'm in favor of is taking those baby steps
Yep.
because it's easy to get discouraged and overwhelmed, especially if you're busy. Maybe you're in the peak of your career and you have family and you have all these responsibilities around, and people think, and you hear people talking about this too, like during the quarantine, oh, I got out of shape and gained 20 pounds because my gym closed during quarantine. And I'm like, excuse me? Um, you do you
Did your
have a
body shut up
staircase?
too? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah. I mean, like, do you have a staircase in your home? Do you have something that weighs more than 10 pounds? Because you can do a lot of things for your body in a very tight space with
Yeah.
very affordable equipment. And so to get away from the excuses and realize that right there within your reach is your next 5-minute workout to the point where you
Yeah.
can start huffing and puffing and feeling your muscles working. I always use the example of like even standing in a cubicle in a workplace, you can drop for a set of 20 deep squats and sit back down in your chair and stand back up. And even if you're pretty fit, I challenge anyone to do 20 squats in the cubicle. You'll
Hmm.
start feeling it on 17, 18, 19, and 20. You'll start huffing and puffing and your legs will burn. And
Yep.
that is your baby step forward to a more fitness inspired lifestyle.
I love that. It's funny. I'm laughing because I kind of do that. I tend to be like a person that moves a lot throughout like working. And so I need to move from one place to another. Or if my walk to the kitchen, I'm always like, okay, stretch and lift my legs or squat it out. And so it's
Love it.
funny, but it makes me feel good because if not, again, I think another big issue is we're sitting all the time.
Mm.
Like we're sitting all the time and we're so just used to sitting, which is not good for us. Like we should be
Yeah, I
in
mean,
movement most of the time, at least.
the headlines about sitting is the new smoking, it's a whole area of
Yep.
research revealing that the human is simply not meant to have periods of stillness. And in fact, there's research showing that in as little as 20 minutes of stillness, you experience a measurable decline in glucose tolerance and an increase in insulin resistance. In other words, you start
Amen.
uh, getting worse at fat burning, and you also have a decline in cognitive function if you are still for as little as 20 minutes. And there's also brain research showing that we can only really concentrate on a peak cognitive task for around 20 minutes without needing a break to refresh the brain neurons and reset that deep focus that we engage in throughout the day. So,
Yep.
what does this mean? It means we have
It
this
means we're standing
desperate
up right now.
obligation. Yeah, we have to move
Yeah.
and take quick breaks. And I call this area or this concept micro workouts, where you just do a tiny little movement like you described, going into the kitchen, and you can do marching steps, which is actually a great practice for sprinting. Whatever it is to get the blood flowing and the brain refreshed. And if we sprinkle these in throughout the day, many experts believe that this is a higher priority than adhering to a devoted fitness regimen.
Yeah.
So yes, it's great. I'm glad you went to your 6 a.m. spin class and busted it out and, high five the person next to you while you're both sweaty and then you go on with your busy day. But if you go on with a day that entails sitting on the subway, going to the office, looking at the screen, and then coming home and watching digital entertainment in your leisure hours, the workout and the workout regimen is not going to cover for the adverse health consequences of a sedentary dominant life. This is research
Yeah.
called the active couch potato syndrome. There was a study that we put in our new book, Born to Walk, from Denmark, and they had four
Hmm.
categories of people. And they had the really fit people that otherwise didn't do much activity. They had people that were doing a little bit of fitness, but a lot of daily activity, and so on down the list by people that didn't exercise, nor did they move a lot. And the people who just had a generally active daily lifestyle ranked above the fitness freaks in general health standards because of that movement throughout the day.
Yeah, I apologize. Um,
I can keep talking, don't worry. So the thing is, we tend to get overwhelmed. We talked about the gym closing and getting out of shape during COVID and all that stuff. So the way around this is to just resolve to take these short breaks throughout the day and these little bursts of activity where it's not that tiring, it's not that strenuous, but over time you can get quite fit from these little sprinkles. And I think the fitness industry hasn't really done a good job of promoting this because the fitness industry is there to make money and sell you programming. So they want you to buy the Peloton bike so you can sign up and do these organized classes, and all that stuff is great. However, there's this missing part of what it means to be healthy, fit, active, energetic person, which is just to strive to move more in small bits throughout the day. And that's what I describe with my morning exercise routine where it's within reach of everyone. Maybe it's 5 minutes for you. For me, it's anywhere from 20 to even more. But I don't want to, throw that on to other people because fitness for me is, a big
a
part of my
lifestyle.
life. So
Mhm.
if it's a medium part for you, that is fantastic. But get that 5 minute sprinkled in there and it can be life changing because it leads to, as we all know, with when you set a good habit, it leads to better and better habits and a
Yeah,
deeper connection to it.
I love that. I love that. Brad, something that you brought up before is vitality also in relationships, right? And I think it's so important, and sometimes we overlook that.
Mm.
Vitality isn't just our body, our energy. Well, and our energy and spark is brought into relationships as well. How do you approach that? You said you have two adult children now, but how have you brought that into your life?
Hmm. I think that the dedication to health and fitness really does carry over into being a more patient, sensitive, kind person. And so taking care of your physical body, it sets you up for success in other venues. I think that was the reference I was making to hopefully I was a better parent or am a better parent because I learned the hard way that just being dogged and driven and intense and competitive doesn't necessarily apply to anything, even sports, which is the big one that I'd love for people to take away. And same with in the workplace. Let's say that we have career highs and lows. And I've definitely had I've definitely had those. I'm thinking of my lows where I was fired from a few jobs in short order. Um, Not always because I was a slacker, but just because there was, a difference in vision or whatever.
Mhm.
But it was like maybe that wasn't the best day of my life when I walked out knowing that career path had reached a dead end and I was gone. But it's okay, and you have to realize that, controlling your emotional response and kind of continuing to think those positive, empowering thoughts rather than getting discouraged and down on yourself. These are skills that we can build and that will, we can apply to anything that we face in life because it's not going to be easy. And boy, it's a rough way to go if you're going through a roller coaster ride of life where if your boss compliments you and says great job during the team meeting, you have a wonderful day, and then the next meeting they say, well, where the heck is this report? You said it was going to be done 2 weeks ago. Why do you keep delaying things? And then you feel terrible and you get to go and complain and commiserate with other people. And that's interesting because humans sort of like to connect in certain ways. And one of the ways that we connect is commiserating and complaining. And so it
So
gives us a
much. Hmm.
payoff and we feel whole or we feel empowered, but it doesn't serve anyone there. So I think
Yeah.
it also doesn't serve you very well in intense competitive athletic arena to complain and whine and all those things. And so when I had to learn that lesson the hard way, that carries over really beautifully into striving to be someone that doesn't complain and commiserate too much, and in fact just tries to realize what can I do about this today? And if the answer is nothing, um, I don't pay attention to the news much, but I know
Yeah.
that a new pope was named. I'm not a religious person. I don't know anything about it, but whether I'm in favor or against, I can't do one thing about it. I can't call anybody up and say, "Hey, can you pick a different pope?" And so I wish the pope well. But other than that, I don't have a lot of emotional investment or cognitive power to devote to something that's out of my control.
Yeah. I think it's a good point. Like, you can control what you can control, and you can't control what you can't control. And so, why stress about those things? There's already so much. And a lot of people stress about so many things that are out of their control that there's nothing you can do about it. So, focus on what you can, be the
Mm,
best person, and
mm,
be the best person for yourself rather than for your boss or for
mm,
someone, for the appreciation of others, right? Because, as you said, if I move on along life waiting for appreciation of others, then
mm.
that's a really rough life to live. You're going a lot of ups and downs there.
Yeah, and I'm working on this too myself because I'm not a big fan of conflict or people that become my enemies or whatever. And so, I strive to be well liked and responsive and kind and sensitive. But at times, the demand for authenticity and saying what you got to say, you can still say it with loving kindness, but I think it makes for more rich and meaningful relationships. So that's a
Yeah.
challenge that I've had to face in recent times where it's like, of course, I was frustrated and disappointed, but I didn't say anything to you because I didn't want to mess up our smooth and streamlined relationship. Well, then what is a relationship unless you can, have honest, direct, open feedback? And
Yeah.
especially if you have a tendency to hold on to things rather than express yourself, what's going to happen is you're going to blow at some point and you're not going to use that loving kindness when you have time to dispense the feedback.
Yeah.
So everybody can do better at this, and it's nice to like maintain a heightened awareness and realize that you're going to be battling against your normal tendencies. Like I'm always going to be this way as a baseline, and I have to work hard to kind of find my voice and use it and all those wonderful things.
Yeah, I love that for sure. It doesn't mean that we don't have to speak up. It just means there's ways and ways to do it. And
Hmm.
there's a way that allows us to communicate in a form that is understood by our partner or by whomever I'm communicating with. And there's others ways where it's a little harder, and then you
Yeah.
blow up, and that never turns out
Um,
right.
I'm also thinking of the great advice from John Gray, the world's best-selling relationship author of all time, with his Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus series.
Oh, I read
And
that. Hmm.
yeah,
It's
he's been on my
beautiful.
podcast 4 times. Absolutely life-changing. I love his stuff. But he has a special advice for the male, which is to maintain emotional control at all times in the relationship because the dynamics underneath the surface are that, our deepest biological drives male and female have these tendencies where, we want to connect and the female wants to feel like she's safe and secure and protected and supported. And John Gray says today, with loving relationships, a lot of times the most immediate threat is the anger and the upset of a reactive male that will actually destroy a relationship by expressing anger to your female partner instead of just realizing that whatever you have going on that's a dispute or a conflict, there's ways to maintain emotional control and perhaps even reflect on what your contribution is to the problem rather than just whining, complaining, criticizing, and arguing. And these are ways that modern day relationships get destroyed because we're dealing with so much. And it wasn't that difficult, generations ago when, the man left to go work in the factory and the
Hmm.
woman stayed home and cooked meals and took care of the kids. And of course, we don't want to rewind back to that more dated culture. But today, I really appreciate that advice where we want to have, that utmost level of protection for the status of the relationship at all times. And maybe that might override I'm talking to the men now, your little bitchy tendency to get angry and complain and fire back if the female's upset that you came 20 minutes late to where you said you were going to be. And your first instinct is to say, oh, yeah, well, you were an hour late last week. Remember that? So who are you to talk? Rather than try to be,
Yep.
understanding and feeling like, oh, you're upset now. I'm apologizing and I'm going to try to make it right. So let's move on. And I acknowledge your position. And it doesn't take anything away. Like, yeah, yeah, you still have your point that you could have made, but you feel a lot better if you can just kind of go with the flow,
Yep.
especially in that very delicate and sensitive, loving relationship. So
I love that.
that's a good one. Yeah.
That is a great one. I also love how our discussion and conversation went from sports and athletics. That's kind of what everyone thinks with vitality. But then we ended up talking about relationships and communication. And I think everything is just so connected. And it's so
Hmm.
amazing that we are able to connect all the dots together because vitality ultimately is all of it together. It's a 360. If I'm not good with my relationships, I'm not going to be good potentially at work. I'm not going to be good in my fit life. And it's all connected and everything affects all the others. So thank you so much, Brad. This was incredible how we were able to talk again from sports to relationships to communication to routines. Where can everyone find you if they're looking for you, if they want to know more, if they want to follow your programs? There's so much that you've done. Where can they find you?
Oh, thanks. You can listen to the Be Rad podcast on the same channel that you found this wonderful Vitality Lounge. And I love to connect with people and, receive input and feedback, and we communicate with all our listeners. So it's B period RAD, the Be Rad podcast. And I also have a website, bradkearns.com. Our new book that we just touched on briefly, that I wrote with Mark Sisson, is called Born to Walk. And it's a fresh look at the the proper approach to full body functional fitness for longevity, which emphasizes general everyday movement at a comfortable pace, that is walking, getting away from the extreme endurance
Hmm.
exercise that can be so health destructive, and then also adding in the important elements of uh, strength training, sprinting, things that build that power and explosiveness, which are super important as we age. And there's a website called born2walkbook.com that talks all about the book. And that's what I've been up to lately. So,
I love that. I love that. And I always want to end up on kind of a last word of advice or a personal motto that you'd like to share with our audience. Anything that you'd like to give them as the last thing.
oh boy. I think to summarize that important question you asked in the middle about what's someone to do who's let it go a little bit and is going through the years and realizing that they're not at their most vital peak, the first thing would be to clean up your act. And what that what that entails is not just going to the cupboard and cleaning out all that junk food, but that would be a great first step. But also, if your relationships are not in order and you have a tendency to snap back at your wonderful girlfriend or wife who's trying her best and trying to be supportive, and you're dealing with the stresses of everyday life, clean up your act and be a better person in that way. And that is a great catalyst. And you can apply that term to just about anything that's a little shaky these days.
I love that. Clean up your act and embrace vitality in every form and shape. Thank you so much, Brad.
You've been listening to the Vitality Lounge with Micol Bok, powered by Gainswave. Make sure to subscribe to the Vitality Lounge wherever you get your podcasts. Gainswave is a clinically proven therapy that allows you to embrace vitality both in the bedroom and in your life. Whether to improve and boost performance, pleasure, and confidence, head on over to Gainswave.com. Thanks for listening.